Hopefully we are live. Somebody can just give me the okay just to let me know that everything is coming through all right. Good. Here we are, end of the 4-part series. Obviously got a little bit of a bumper episode today. You get the delight of listening and watching me for 3 hours rather than the usual 2. I will plan for kind of a little kind of 5-minute breather somewhere around the sort of 1.5 to 2 hour mark, because I'm not sure I can speak for 3 hours continuously. But yeah, I thought it'd be nice to try something on Saturday, see if we can get a little bit of a higher number of viewers. And yeah, I think it would be really, really nice to see where this application can go. So kind of, for those of you who obviously have followed from the very start, you'll be familiar with what we've built so far. For those of you who are new, I'll do a little kind of 5-minute recap, just to kind of cover off what we've built so far, before we get into this final slog to get over the line. So let me flick onto here. And why is my screen not showing up? The magic of live television. Okay, hopefully that screen is coming through okay now. What I've done is I've dropped the resolution on this screen, so hopefully things are a little bit of a better size. If it does look like things aren't the right size, yeah, please do just let me know, and I will increase the font size and the like. So where are we so far? So we're kind of looking at this as a 2-part application, one being the front end, one being the back end. Front end being built in React, caveat being I am 100% not a front end developer, so for those of you who look at the code, I apologise, but it will serve a purpose for us for now. The front end is going to be kind of listing out the data we've got, allow us to add more data, and really just give some useful way, a nice way for us to be able to see visually what we've built. So all of this is either putting data to or reading data from our backend that we've built, and that backend is a combination of API gateway, Lambda functions, and DynamoDB as our data store. So that's kind of where we are. For those of you who watched last week, you'll remember that we kind of got as far as this page here. So we know we've built all the routes already. In our backend, we're able to list the coffee beans, to delete, update, store new ones, all those sorts of things. But yeah, we'd kind of started on this front end page but hadn't actually finished it off. So what I've kind of done in the interest of time is, so that we can move on to the next part of this, I just kind of wired up this front end page here, so that we can now kind of create a new coffee bean from my favourite roaster, and our tasting notes can be not instant coffee. So then we can save this, it'll post data after our API, and we've then got our new coffee bean that's appeared in here. So I've kind of wired that up, done a little bit of kind of styling tweaks that I talked about last time, just to be able to make it look a little bit nicer. But yeah, ahead of all of that, nothing has really changed too much. As I popped in the chat to start with, there is all of this code's up on GitHub now. Public repositories. My plan is that anything I don't get done today, I will find time to finish, and that will kind of mean you've got a good example of how you can build a serverless application and wire up a front end to it. Again, as I say, the front end might be a little bit rusty, but it'll give you a good idea of where to start. So I guess our next step we want to look at is kind of what we're doing with these coffee beans. So once you've got your coffee beans, you also want to turn them into an espresso. So the process of doing that has a number of variables in it. So those variables are things like how fine or how coarse you grind those beans, how hot the water is, how long you let it brew for, and how much coffee you put in to start with. And all of those things can have a fairly extreme impact upon how your coffee tastes at the end. So what you want to do, and the whole purpose of this application was to be able to come onto this application here and see, here's a list of all of our different coffees we've had, and be able to kind of track over time and see, yeah, I thought this particular set of variables for this particular coffee bean worked really well. So once you've found those magic numbers, you're able to keep using them again and again and again, and you haven't got to go through the process of experimenting and trying to work out how to extract the best coffee from those beans every time you buy that bag again. Really for me, this was just an application to solve a personal need, I guess. In that when I kind of got started with building or with brewing espresso at home, I found very quickly that the coffee machine that I'd bought before Christmas and the nice bag of Christmas coffee that I'd been bought for Christmas, I burnt through in a day, because I kind of tried 14 or 15 attempts to get this coffee right, and none of them were really drinkable. So yeah, the idea of this was to be able to reduce the amount of coffee that we're wasting, and get better coffee over time. So enough talk about how to make espresso, because it will make me want one. Let's start by looking at our data, I think. So a couple of weeks ago, we introduced this idea of something called single table design. So single table design as a concept essentially is what it says on the tin. It's talking about having the ability to store lots of different types of item in a single NoSQL database table. I guess you can think of it a little bit like kind of polymorphism almost, but the idea being that we'd kind of be able to group these items on the table by a particular key, and as a result of that, we'd be able to rather than making, say, 2, 3, 4 queries to get all of our data, we can make one query and say, give me all the data about this particular coffee bean. So what that means is it means we can, when you look at it in this view here, we could query it and we could say, okay, let's have everything about this bean, and it would return kind of the metadata about it, which will be the strength, who made it, what it's meant to taste like, and the name of it. But then we can also, and this is what we look at today, is we can look at adding these ones. So these ones are going to be records of our actual coffee brews that we've made. And that's going to be the real important thing, I think. Being able to make one query and get all of this data in one go. DynamoDB is designed to be very, very low latency. We're sort of talking in the single digits of milliseconds most of the time. But you do pay for to pay per amount of data that you are pulling back. So the better you can scope your queries, and without having to do multiple queries, the less money you'll pay, which is, in the world of AWS, always a good thing, because those bills do rack up. I think probably our first step for this is going to be to start defining some routes, building out a Lambda function, so that we can actually start to perhaps to begin with use something like Postman to make requests to our API and store a particular brew against a particular coffee bean. So let's head over to PyCharm, and I'll make this text a little bit bigger in here. Is that size text okay for people? It looks okay on my preview I've got. I'll take silence as it being good. Cool, lovely. Yes, so we've got our CloudFormation template. That's where we're going to be building out these new Lambda functions. We're going to be defining them all in here, wanting to really push that idea of keep everything possible automatable. So if it's something you can provision with CloudFormation, or if you prefer something like Terraform or the serverless framework are both good options as well, then yeah, why not do it? Because it makes life so much easier. It means that kind of between these sessions, I can tear down the entire application. And that kind of means there's no cost being incurred, anything, and then just before I start these streams, I can spin it all up again, and within 10 minutes all that infrastructure is there and ready to go, which is really useful to have. So let's start off with this. So we need to provision a new Lambda function. And this Lambda function is going to do our we'll call it coffee brew model. We've moved away from this idea of models within API Gateway, but but rather than rename things, we'll stick with it just so it doesn't get too confusing, and I'll refactor it as a sort of addendum to this stream. So let's copy and paste this to start with, just so we've got kind of what we need. So each of these resources need to be unique, so we just have to make sure that's changed there. We're going to change where we're going to get this code from. So rather than coming from coffee bean model, it's going to come from a folder called coffee brew model. We're still going to be accessing the same DynamoDB table, so let's carry on passing that as a environment variable. We'll change this so that when Lambda Power Tools is using AWS X-Ray to do its tracing and logging, it'll scope it by this name rather than the coffee bean one, which makes it easier for us to see all of the telemetry. And other than that, what have we got? So permissions are going to be the same again. Let's go for this here. So we're going to say any path either at coffee brews or coffee brews / something will be handled by this function. So we've got that now. What I'm going to do is, again, I'll copy and paste this folder here just so we've got the format we need. And what we will do is we'll leave all that in there. We're going to change all of it in a minute, but I want to just get this deployed first. So we've made this change, we've got a new Lambda function, so let's deploy it. So if we go back over to our terminal, I've already set my credentials up, so I can run things like this, and it will show me that I am all connected up, and I've got a role in my demo account that I'm using. So what we can then do is we can then do sam build, and that will build our two functions we've got. So we can see here it's building this coffee bean model function and our coffee bean or coffee brew model function. When it's building it, what it's doing is it's looking in this folder. It's saying, okay, we've got this requirements.txt. These are the packages that the default SAM application will recommend you install. You don't need them in there, but so that the mechanism is there as a sample, they do ship with every SAM template that you spin up from. But we could take that out because we're not using the requests package in this. So we've built the functions now. So let's do sam deploy. Just going to make sure I have set my region up because this catches me out every time. And we can just make sure, yep, we're using the default one. That's fine. So let's then just do sam deploy. I must say, doing these at the weekend does feel a lot more fresh. When it kind of gets to 5:30 midweek, your brain's a little bit frazzled from working all day, and no, this feels quite good. Equally, if there are any questions, any comments, or anything all the way through, just pop them in the chat, and I'll answer them as I go along. Don't worry about waiting until the end or anything. Just go for it. Equally, if you want to reach out after the streams, if you're part of the Norfolk developers Discord group, then yeah, feel free just to drop me a message on there. Failing that, then I've just put my Twitter handle in the chat, so you can message me there as well. Door is always open. So we can now see we've deployed this. Everything's come back green. We're all good. So if we have a look in our console, and we look first of all at CloudFormation. So even though all of this is AWS SAM, AWS SAM deploys CloudFormation templates. So CloudFormation is the AWS service that we're using. So we can see here, if we look at events, that at 20 past 4, 21 past 4, we've done all these things here, which is what we've just done. And if we look in resources, we can now see down here, we've got our coffee brew model function. Your question, Alex, about the costings is a very good question. And I can tell you that, so I didn't spin this application down after the last stream, I don't think. No, I didn't. I left this active and everything for the last week, and because things like Lambda and DynamoDB and API Gateway are on the whole pay per usage, unless anybody was hitting the API, there would be no costs involved. I mean, what you can see here is how much this account gets used. So actually, for this month, up to today, my cost for Lambda is nothing, X-ray is nothing, so tracing is free. For what I've done, it isn't free if you use a lot of it. API Gateway has been free, DynamoDB has been free, CloudWatch has been free. So this has cost me nothing. What you do find is, by the looks of this, I've spent nothing on any of these for quite a while. The freeze here is pretty generous. One thing I would say is 100% setup budgets. It's the one thing that is I'm going to say absolutely crucial, and then show you a screen that says I've got no budget set up. But yes, it's the one thing I can really recommend is set up a budget. Unfortunately, a budget doesn't stop you from spending more money. So it's not like a kind of hard limit on how much your account can incur. But what it will do is it will alert you when you are exceeding or getting close to your budget. So that's a good thing. But without that, obviously you don't know until your bill comes, or you proactively look that anything is costing money. In serverless applications, probably the one place, a bit of a tangent here, but it's a good thing to think about, because cost is one of the things to optimize for on AWS. In serverless applications, probably the one cost I think catches you out the most would be CloudWatch logs. So if you've got either a application that logs a lot or a very busy application, then CloudWatch will fill up very quickly, and you do pay for that. You kind of pay for the storage. That cost of CloudWatch will keep going up and up and up and up because you're storing more and more logs. What you can do is you can set retention periods on CloudWatch log groups. So you can say after 90 days start clearing out these logs that are older than 90 days. So that's worth looking at. But something like Lambda, for example, to give you an idea, if we use Ireland as our example. So if you're not using the if you're using the normal x86 prices, because Lambda now has two versions of compute you can use. If your application is ARM compatible, it's a bit cheaper. But for the sort of thing we're doing here, even the smallest Lambda is costing this amount per millisecond. So kind of extrapolating up, if we had that and our application was taking, I don't know, even if it took 400 milliseconds to return a response, then that's the cost per execution. And say it ran, I don't know, say it ran every minute of every hour in a day, and then we had a 31-day month. So if you have a Lambda that runs every hour of the day for an entire month, 24 hours a day, and it takes 400 milliseconds every time, which is quite a while for a Lambda, your cost would be just under 4 cents per month. You'll pay for things like network traffic if you're doing a lot of that, but the free tier for Lambda is very generous. So you get 1 million free executions per month. Executions and compute time are separate in pricing. So this is compute time. Executions are 20 cents per million requests. So basically, if you are doing less than 1 million requests per month and you're not using very powerful Lambdas, then it will be, the Lambda part of it will be free. Obviously things like S3, CloudWatch, any networking you need to do does get charged, but all in all, you'd have to be doing a lot of it to run up a significant cost. The cost calculator is definitely getting better as well. So yeah, you can estimate it fairly well now. Hopefully that answers the question. So we can now see here we've got our two Lambda functions. Obviously they're exactly the same size because we've just used the same code. But this coffee brew one is the one we're going to start working on now. So let's go back to PyCharm. So we've got this in CloudFormation, we've got this set up. So let's actually start on, let's start on building out some methods to actually store this data, shall we? So we know from our definitions in here, let's close some of this stuff down. We know from this here, the sort of things we're thinking about saving for a particular coffee brew are the how finely or coarsely it's being ground, the water temperature, the dosage, so how much coffee we're putting in, the yield, which is how much espresso we're getting out, and how long we're extracting it for. We will probably add another one in here as well that's like maybe a comments and a rating or something, so we can kind of quickly filter on that. Perhaps that would be quite nice. So let's start to look at this then. So we want to, which one should we work on first? Let's do add first, shall we? Because that I think is going to be the most sensible place to begin. So we know that in order to add a coffee bean or coffee brew, so we need to change this to brews to start with straight away. We know that we need to know what particular coffee bean it is. So let's go for bean ID is our one required field. So we're going to add some validation here just to make sure we've got that. And our bean ID is going to be this here. So what we can then do is we can then say our data we're adding is going to be on a primary key or partition key rather of bean ID, which will be in our payload, like so. Then this is where we're going to start to think more about the single table design. So what to be able to do with this, I'd then be able to say return me from my DynamoDB table all of the brews for this particular coffee bean by passing it the bean ID as a partition key. And then you can say, as part of your query, you've got filtered like begins with, for example, is a good one we can use for this. So we can say return only items that begin with brew hash rather than bean hash. So this will then return all of these here, which will be good. So let's do that here. So we've then got our sort key is going to be brew hash, and then let's add in here the date. So to do this, we'll just create a date here, and for this date we can use the datetime library in Python. So from this we can say datetime.now, and we'll format it so that it is YMD T, which will be for time, and then HMS. So we'll then have a nicely formatted date string that will go into here for us. So then the next things we want to add are going to be things like grind size, and that can come in the grind size key in our payload. Water temperature, that come in water temperature. What else did we have? Dose, yield, and extraction time. So we've got dose, so that'll be in grams. Yield, which will also be in grams. Extraction time. And we're going to add two more, we're going to add let's add a comment one so people can say, yeah, liked it, no, I didn't like it, and a rating. So what we can then say is we can just return a nice message to say brew has been added. Cool. So you kind of see here that actually I haven't had to change anything in my schema to make this compatible. So because we've designed this table in a kind of flexible way, I haven't got to think about, I mean, let's take something like Laravel, for example. So obviously Laravel would be using maybe a MySQL or a Postgres database, so a relational database for it. But in order to add these kind of features, we'd have to write a migration. We'd have to, in that migration, maybe create a table or add columns to an existing table. But for this, we don't. We've kind of got our single table. The structure of it is flexible enough that we can just continue to add all of these different attributes. And yeah, I think the maximum item size for one item in a DynamoDB table is 4 kilobytes. So you can put quite a lot of data in there if you needed to. But the crucial bit is having an idea up front, the kind of patterns you need to be able to support. So yeah, there are considerations to make with it. So let's deploy this again, and then we can use Postman to post to this route here and see if we can't add ourselves a coffee brew. So same commands again, sam build, builds our functions, and sam deploy. Your point, Alex, about talking to expected schemas is correct in some regards. However, you could enforce it programmatically. So just because you've got a single table behind the scenes doesn't mean you have to have a single class, for example, to interact with it. So you could have a coffee bean model class and a coffee brew model class, each with expected schemas defined in them, which would allow you to only interact with certain fields, and they would then map nicely to attributes in DynamoDB. So there are ways around it, but it is 100% a mindset shift, and it took me quite a long time to be able to start thinking in this upside down single table design world. So this is deployed now. So let's hop over to Postman, which is now on the wrong screen, and let's open up a new tab, and this time we're going to be posting to a endpoint which is coffee brews, wasn't it? I think, yeah. So we've got our body here, so let's go for a bean ID. For this we'd have in the front end this bean ID already, but because we haven't got to that kind of feature yet, I'm going to just grab it straight from the database. So we'll grab one of them. And back to Postman. I think I prefer it to be like this as well. That feels like a more JSON way of doing things. So let's just redeploy that whilst we're working on this. Cool. Let's get back here. So we had bean ID, we had comments. So let's say was a bit acidic. Perhaps try a finer grind. So we had that. We had rating. So let's say a rating can be let's go for a 2, shall we? Then we have dose. So this will be a number in our case. We can say 18 grams in, for example. Normally you'd aim for most coffee beans, double out to what you put in. So 36 grams out. We had water temperature. And that can be, let's say, 92 degrees. And what else do we say? Extraction time. And then our extraction time can be, let's say, 18 seconds, which will be a bit fast normally. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Have I missed one out here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. What have I? Oh, grind size. That would be the one I've missed. Possibly the most important one of all. Cool. So let's send that request off and see what happens. Okay, good start. So if we now look in here, we should see, hopefully, our item here. Interestingly, null has been put in for comment. So if I, okay, that's why. And has the date not worked either, has it? I don't think. No, the date needs to be. Oh, I know why. Yeah, so I just need to use percents in front of these. Otherwise, it gets interpreted as a literal y-m-d, etc. So let's just redeploy that. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Alex, by the old versus new. I'm happy to give the answer a go. Maybe if you can give me like a example of when that problem might occur. Cool. So we've updated that now. So let's run this in again. And hopefully this time when we run our scan on the table, we've got 7 items. And if we look at this, we've got our partition key here, which is the same as this particular bean. All these numbers that came in, and our comment as well that we made. So that's looking pretty good. So what we can do now is we can, what should we do next? Let's do the get one's probably quite simple, isn't it? So we can just say, so we're almost going to treat, I think, this as like it'll be a unique ID for a particular coffee brew for a particular coffee bean. So I think what we'll do is we will take this here and we'll say for a particular coffee brew, then we want to get how can we do this? Almost feels like this method here, or this root, belongs in the coffee bean section, I think. Maybe. In the kind of my idea being that would you want to really have that kind of endpoint how we've got at the moment, or would it be better to have a coffee beans and then you kind of bean ID and then a brew and then a brew ID, because that would then give us kind of what we want for a particular coffee bean, given that the combination of these two is unique but this isn't necessarily unique, or unique globally, I should say. It'll be unique per bean, but not unique globally. So I'm gonna put a pause on that one and go and do that one in a minute in the other Lambda function, I think. Okay, so this one's quite straightforward. So we'll say for a coffee brew, for a bean and a brew, yeah, that's fine. So we can do this, we can delete this item, yeah, that's fine. So what we do is, when you're trying to delete something, in order for this to come back and actually say yes, it's been deleted, or no, it hasn't been deleted, rather than just a case of returning a response and saying, yeah, your request has been received. We have to specify a condition. So the condition essentially saying only carry out this request if this condition passes. So what we'll do is I'm gonna I think I can use this attribute exists on a key. Or can I do a key exists? Maybe. Let's have a look. Let's see if we can use that, shall we? And then let's just go for deletion successful. So coffee brews, bean ID, brew ID. Yeah, let's try that. Technically, you don't need the condition for it to succeed, but there's no way of handling an error if you don't have the condition in there. It's a bit of a weird way of doing it, to be honest, but it is the way we have to do it with this. Okay, so that's deployed. Let's grab a brew ID and go back to Postman. Let's go for a delete. So it's a coffee brew, and we want the bean. There's almost where you start to get away from that kind of, does it make sense as a RESTful API? Because you'd need a unique key, I think, to make this, a unique key to make this truly RESTful, because you could then say, just give me deletion for one particular coffee brew. Let's see what this does. That's going to cause a problem, isn't it? How do I escape a hash in the URL? What's the And of course then it's going to do that, isn't it? That's fine. So we know that's going to have a hash in, so can we do what's the one I'm looking for? Python URL decode. Cool, that's fine. We'll use that one. Can I just do unquote? Is it going to be smart enough to tell me where to get that from? It is. Thank goodness for IDEs. So let's go for that again and see if this time it's going to figure out what it needs to do and delete it. Cool, that's deployed again. Let's try this. What's it going to say? Deletion successful. Cool. Well, let's have a look and see if it was successful, shall we? It was. That's good. So we've now got that delete one. Not 100% happy about this, I don't think. I'd like to perhaps revisit that and see whether there's a different way we can maybe design this table. Can I? Let's have a look. How could we do this? It'd be nice to have some form of we could do that, Alex. To me, reading that, I would almost expect I'd expect there to be kind of multiple beans per brew, which conceptually wouldn't really work. What about if we I'm wondering whether this should again be another one that kind of belongs. Yeah, belongs in the coffee bean section. Because then you could have something that's maybe like coffee beans, bean ID. And then my idea would be then maybe to have like the time, because we know that the prefix for the time is going to be brew hash all the time. So we could have like something like that maybe. Yeah. Let's move this to the. I'm wondering whether there might be a few here because coffee bean is always the top level that everything kind of descends from. I'm wondering that other than maybe the post, which even a post you could argue would be part of the coffee bean section, because that you could add to something like something like that, which would, yeah, I think we need to rethink this, rethink these roots. We might even be able to do away with this Lambda function, or at least move this so we, instead of that, we have coffee beans slash I've got no idea how this is going to evaluate this as to whether whether the other Lambda function might take this and be greedy about it and swallow all of this up as well. Let's see. So let's do this as brew time instead. We don't need this unquote anymore because we're not going to have that in there. We'll have like brew hash and brew time, and that time can be our unique thing within here. So let's do that slash brews slash brew time. Okay, that's fine. Let's try. So this will be posting to coffee beans slash bean ID slash brews. So we'll have bean ID in there instead. So we don't need that bit of validation. And that will come in our argument instead of our JSON payload. This feels a bit better, I think. Coffee bean slash bean ID slash brews, post to that. Then we delete by going coffee bean slash bean ID slash brews brew time. We can also use this for our get bean one, I think. That would make sense, I think. Let's deploy this and see what happens, because I'm intrigued as to whether API Gateway is smart enough to evaluate all the routes, or whether it will be and look for the most specific, or whether it will find the first one that matches and then be greedy and Yeah, just send it all to that first Lambda function. I am intrigued. Cannot create a child or resource with a greedy path variable. How can we do this then? Let's start off with a failsafe of Googling it and go from there. So let's have a think. So this coffee bean one, do we ever have any more than one level deep? I don't think we do we? No. So I'm wondering whether I could actually say for this other one, which is our coffee bean model, it's going to match coffee beans, and then it's going to match this, because it's going to be, that's going to be our resource. And then I could say on this, let's match bean and brew. I'm not sure how this is going to impact our Lambda Power Tools decorators that we've been using. Probably ought to, oh, it's fine. Just making sure my face wasn't covering up like half of the screen, but we're not really doing anything down here for now. So, did I miss one or did I forget to save it? Oh, did I? I know I didn't build it. The template is from the last one. No. Let's do SAM build and SAM deploy. Are you finding there's more people on this one, Alex, or is it still a quiet one? This is looking more positive, certainly from the API gateway front, at least. So let's just try this and see what happens. Can we get all of our coffee beans? Still gonna work or not? Okay. Can we get a specific coffee bean? We can. I am pleasantly surprised. So in this case, let's now post to coffee beans /bean/brews. So This kind of makes more sense now because we are. Is it brews or coffee brews? I can't remember. I think it was just brews, wasn't it? Yeah. So yeah, so we're posting to a brew for a particular bean. That makes a bit more logical sense to me. Let's hit that and see what happens. Okay. So if we then look in, have I lost my, where'd that go? We look in DynamoDB at this one. We've then got our brew in here for this particular bean. We're looking pretty good. So now, if we were to, let's just test that our delete one works still. So this time we're actually going to be saying coffee beans / bean ID, and then rather than having this horrible unquote thing in it, we can do brew / and the time. So saying brew at that time, that makes sense because the time is different now as to what it was before. That one. There we go. So we then just re-scan this. Cool. That has gone. So let's post another one back. So we've got one in the database. So we can play with that. Cool. So we've now got this here. We can look at our next one, which can be, let's do get, shall we? Because that I think is the one that I missed off. So it's going to be the same URL signature as this with a different HTTP method. Call it get coffee brew, and we'll use that same idea as we had for this. So we'll kind of transform a coffee brew for the response. Let's comment out the ones we aren't using for now. Get, there we go. So we are going to say try to get an item. We don't need to do this try anymore because we haven't got this conditional check in here. We'll have this response. So DynamoDB doesn't raise kind of any exceptions if there aren't any, if there's no item that matches this particular schema. It won't raise an exception. It will just return no item in the response. So if we look at the coffee bean one, for example, that we did a couple of weeks back, we'll just have this here and we'll say, yeah, if it's not in the response, then let's return a 404 error. Okay, and then we want to return a transform coffee brew for response, and we'll pass in the item, which will be response item. So we know this exists now because we've caught it there if it doesn't. So we're good on that front. So we just need to do this transformation bit here. So let's do bean ID, which is going to be our partition key that we've got on there. Then we'll do brew ID, which is going to be, well, let's do brew time, I think we'll go for. We'll just call it time, can't we? We know it's a brew because of the context. And that will be, so it's going to be in the value for the sort key. But what we want to do is we probably want to actually take this and say, we know we don't want the first 5 characters. So let's, the first 5 characters will be brew hash. So let's take the 6th character and onwards, which will give us just the date. And I'll pop a little comment in here to say, don't want the brew hash at the start. And then what we've got is, let's start looking at these. So grind size. Go through this again. Water temperature. What's the time? 20 past 5. Cool. So we've got dose, which is going to be in that attribute. Yield, which is going to be in that attribute. So we've got what? 1, 2, 3, 4. A couple more, isn't there? Rating, which will be in that one. And we've got, do I go for comment or comments? Comment. And then there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what have I forgotten? Code, grind size, water temperature, dose, yield, extraction time. Extraction time. Cool. So we've now got that acts as our transformer. What we can then also do is we can do coffee beans, bean ID, and we'll do our list one whilst we're here. Then we get the brews. So we're going to get our bean ID. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, this is a interesting one, in that we can approach it in one of 2 ways. So I'll write up both, and then explain why one is probably better than the other as the application grows. So you could have something like this. So you could say the primary key or partition key is the bean ID, as we've got already, and the sort key. In fact, can I even do this? No, I think there is only one way to do this. Partition key, sort key. No, I will show you the way we need to do this. So in DynamoDB, there's this concept of secondary indexes. So there's 2 types of secondary indexes. One is global secondary indexes, and one is local secondary indexes. So a global secondary index allows you to choose 2 different partition and sort keys to the ones you defined when we created the table. So for example, the ones we defined when we created the table were that our key was made up of an attribute called PK and an attribute called SK. So a global secondary index means we could say, let's have a roaster as our partition key, and that's it. That would then allow us to query on roaster alone, which would be potentially useful in the future. And you've got local secondary indexes, which I haven't used for a long time, but you can, with local secondary indexes, if I am correct in what I think I am about to say, you have to keep your same partition key, but you need to choose a different sort key. So if we wanted to say, let's have a think how you could use this. If you wanted to group things differently, so you've still got that same top level partition. Just turn this night mode off. It keeps what's it called? It's making my eyes go crazy. Night shift, that's the one. Oh, apparently it's turned off. Strange. So with a local secondary index, you can change the sort key but keep the partition key. So for this one, we want to keep the same partition key, because what I want to do is I want to run a query against everything in this particular kind of item collection. So we will get back the metadata as well. But then I can run a filter as part of that same query to only return anything that begins with this brew hash. Or can I? Oh no, I can do this already. What am I talking about? I am being silly, I think. I can do this. So we have a key condition expression. And with this we would say how have we done it in this one here? Make sure I keep things consistent. That's fine. Where'd it go? PK equals PK and SK begins with the attribute name and the value. So then what we can do is in here we can do brew hash, and PK is going to be our bean ID again. Sorry, I went off on a complete tangent then. Let me just make this a bit bright as well. You can't see my face. There we go. That might not be a good thing, but you're stuck with it now. So we'll again do that same pattern of transforming each coffee brew for response over each of the items in this list and return it there. So we can just do coffee brews. Cool. So that should accomplish two more methods, one for getting a particular brew, and one for getting all of the brews. And then it'll just leave us with this one here for updating. So let's go through this deployment again. What I am thinking is once we've done this back-end stuff and got the route set up and all working as much as we think we can do, what we should do is take a 5-minute break, and then we can move over to the front end and start putting this into action and actually seeing it all come together. And it may not even end up being 3 hours, so you might get a little bit of your Saturday evenings back. So this is all deployed now. So what I should be able to do is I should be able to do a get on this one, for example. I obviously just need to know. In fact, let's start off with a list, shall we? Because that way we can get all of the beans, all the brews rather, and go that way. Okay, cool. This has worked. Sort of. I think I've gone a bit too far on the slicing of that string. Where are we? This must be exclusive then, so it starts at number 6. Oh no, hang on. No. There's me being silly and forgetting that lists are indexed from 0. Pretty much what they teach you on day 1 at uni. This is where I need one of those what are they called, stream deck things that I can press a button and a funny sound effect accentuates the fact that I've made a bit of a clanger. Let's try this again. There we go. So these have all come through. We can obviously now grab this particular time here and extend that out. And yeah, we've then got this here. So that's quite good. We're happy with how this is looking, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty okay with it. Right. So next one we've got to look at is this last one here, which is for updating a particular brew. Let's go brew time. We're not all that fussed actually if anything isn't in the request, as long as it will look for these anyway. So if someone doesn't include some of this data, then that's on them. That's not our concern. Let's do this so we can format this a bit nicer. Right, so this is the fun game of remembering all the different ones again. So let's just do set. So grind size can be GS. Dose D. Yield can be Y. Extraction time can be, you guessed it, water. Temperature can be WT, and rating can be R, and finally comment, I'm going to forget it again, comment singular can be C. So we can then go through this and do grind size D for, we'll do this however for that because we might not have it. D for dose, Y for yield, ET for extraction time, WT for water temperature, R for rating, and C for commit. Then we can just update our message here. Cool. Okay, I think this looks like on the first glance it might work. Let's try it and see, shall we? So let's build it and then deploy. Let's get Postman ready so that we can. So let's grab this because we'll need that for our request here. That we aren't going to have bean ID in it, but on reflection I've decided that actually it tasted all right, and so we'll up it to a 3. So we're going to use a put method for this because put is going to be the one for update. Let's double check we have done that. Yep. And if we run that, what happens? 404 not found. What have I forgotten? Coffee beans. Is it? Oh, hang on. Brews. Not brew. The sad trombone plays again. Cool, that has deployed again. So let's just run this and hopefully we'll get something different this time. We certainly got something different. I'm not sure I like it, but suppose we better have a look at the logs, I think. CloudWatch logs. Espresso backend coffee brew model. That's the latest one. Attribute name is a reserved keyword. Reserved keyword comment. Ah. They do reserve the funniest of things. Gonna double check, make sure that is what I think it is, because okay, cool. Couldn't remember if it was attribute names or expression attribute names. I got a very fancy little sticker from Strangers Coffee when my delivery came last week. That was a nice little surprise. So I got a proper little that was very much appreciated. Although I feel like it should have said maybe powered by strangers or something like that, because that is what keeps me going while I'm working from home. This looks like it's worked. So if we now did a get request on that same coffee bean, we've got, oh, maybe it hasn't worked. Or have we got two in there? Oh no, I think it, are they two different ones? Why has that done that? Hang on, what have I done here? That's why. So I've done the, yeah, it's added one because I've given it a different sort key. Didn't know I did that. That's where again the condition expressions, which you can use for update and delete queries, is really useful, because you can actually make sure that it's going to maybe only update or only delete rather than adding, which is what it's done in this case for an update. You learn something new every day. Let's try for what probably will be the last, hopefully, time. Hit the update. Oh, that's to get on update, don't I? Update, get, there we go. Ratings changed, comment has changed. Lovely. So that's the back end pretty much done. In terms of we've got endpoints for all of our different things. We've got the beans, we've got the brews. So the next step, I think, really is, I think, a sensible step would be to look at the front end. So we've got this list of beans here. We can add beans as part of this. But I think what would be nice would be to have this dashboard here where we'll put all of our coffee brews. So that, I think, is probably the next logical step. So yeah, I think we will go and do that now. As we've been doing this for an hour and 3/4, and I could do with more water, let's take a kind of 3 or 4 minute break, and I'll start back up just after 5:45, and we'll get going on the front end. So let's, see you in a few minutes. Okay, I'll just give it a couple of minutes, or maybe 1 minute. Just for people to come back. Alex, I would be intrigued to know what whiskey you're drinking. Whiskey and coffee are fairly equal on my interest list. I probably should add that all this time that I'm talking about strangers, I'm not affiliated in any way with them, just in case they decide they don't like what I've been saying and try to blame me for something. However, if they do like what I'm saying, then a free bag of coffee would not be turned down. But we'll see. Cool. I think we should get back going. We've got about an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes, depending how long this beer lasts. Yeah, so let's go from there. So just as a recap, we've got the back end done now. We've built the Lambda function. We've kind of made sure that our DynamoDB schema is flexible enough, and we're now kind of ready to start thinking about the front end of this and how this can be used as a real app. One thing I would have liked to get onto, but haven't been able to, and probably won't this week. But we'll try and make an effort to get the repo updated with an example of it, is authentication, and how maybe the schema could be made suitable for a multi-user system. Yeah, that would be quite nice to be able to log into it and everyone to be able to have their own little section. I don't think it would be too difficult. Certainly the user authentication wouldn't. It's just the changing of the schema that would be the challenging part. But maybe for next Saturday. Cool. So let's get going, shall we? Let me flick this back onto the right scene. Hopefully that's all clear, and I am loud and clear. If I'm not loud and clear, then hopefully someone will point it out at some point. Cool. So front end, my potentially least favourite part of development, but it is a necessity for working as part of a single person team on this project. However, if there is anyone that wants to team up and turn this into a little product, then why not? Would be open to having a chat. So yeah, let's look at this front end. So we've got all this set up now. Back end is good to go. Let's get that committed. So I don't forget. And I will push it up to GitHub now, so people can look straight away if they want to. Yes, so front end, we need to. Are we running this already? Yeah, cool. We need to have a think about what we want to look like on here. So the beans page is quite good because at the moment we haven't got very many beans, but as this grows, we might want to think about splitting this out into the different roasters. Also, pagination would be a consideration. DynamoDB makes pagination fairly straightforward. there is a hard limit on how much data you can return anyway in one go. So you can use inbuilt pagination, but you can also, I think, specify how much to return. So if you know that you want 10 at a time, you can work that out and just get 10 back. But we won't worry about that for now, because it's going to add unnecessary complexity to what is already going to be a very speedy hour, I think. So let's start by having a look at Tailwind UI, because that's what we're using for all of our components and getting this going, because I am not very strong at CSS, so I thought I'd save you all the headache of watching me struggle through it and go with something like this instead. How should we do this? So this came out, these components came out this week, yesterday I think it was, and I think they might be quite nice for what we want. So my thinking is either a table kind of per bean, or maybe we could look at this and say, let's use this dashboard for our most recent 10 brews or something. We could do that, I think, fairly easily, because our sort key is a date. It makes it really easy for us, and we've got an index already on this table, which allows us to just use the sort key, or just query the sort key. So I'm thinking we could potentially we could get the most recent brews for each bean, perhaps, or maybe we could think about top rated, perhaps. How could we do this? So if I scan this index here, and we say a filter on this to say SK begins with brew hash, just to get an idea of what we could perhaps do. What I'm curious about is whether or not it's going to sort based on this. We can test it, can't we? We can just if we post to this, just kind of a few that are far enough apart that they'll be maybe seconds apart in the table. Here we go, 56. So it doesn't actually filter, it doesn't actually sort based on that, because our sort key is no longer this. Our sort key doesn't actually exist anymore, because this index is purely based on the primary key is just the partition key. There's no composite nature of it. So how can we do this? That sorts it. So there's a couple ways we could think about doing this that I've seen patterns for. I'm probably going to go with the way that isn't necessarily the neither approach is brilliant, but this one's probably the easier of the two to wrap our heads around. So when you query a table, you have to give it a partition key, and then you have to apply some condition on the sort key, because we've combined the two to make our primary key. The other operation you can do is a scan. So a scan doesn't require anything, but you can apply filters to it. The caveat of that is that the way that AWS evaluate how much to charge you for data you've retrieved is before the filters are applied. So this would essentially scan the entire table, charge you for that, then apply the filters and return that to you. And the same thing happens with queries. If you run a query and then a filter, you'll be charged for the output of the query, not the output after the filter, just because of the way that DynamoDB works. So the other thing I think we possibly could do for this idea of most recent brews is to have a table which essentially acts as like a lookup table or a cache almost, or something where whenever a new brew is added by our function, it adds it to that table, and that table would just, I don't know, maybe just keep 5 items in it, for example. That'd be another way we could perhaps do it. So it would be like having a kind of lookup for, these are the bean / brew time combinations that are most recent. So we could do it that way. However, I think we probably are better off by just starting with what is probably the most important thing, which is being able to add a coffee brew to this screen. Because without being able to add one, the app doesn't really do very much. So let's take inspiration from our add bean page. We know we can do something like this. So I will grab from here. We want this. So we've got a component called add in there. We'll just, for now, we'll use the same one. And here, obviously, we're going to be having some different things on there anyway. So I'm going to go for like coffee beans / add brew. I think probably is a sensible. Oh, let's go for coffee brews. add brew, and then brew add. Add. And then what I think would be nice is on that front screen there. In my head, it's like a sort of panel almost, like a kind of almost like a button, but bigger. But I don't want just a big button. Let's go for, where was the one I just saw? Empty state something. Empty states. I think that'll look quite good. Something like that. Let's roll with that. So we'll grab this from here, and go to our add.js, or our index rather, for brews, and we will return this to start with. Over time, this will have something conditional in here, because this conditional will be basically saying if there's a list already, then show a list and a little add button. If there isn't a list, then show this brew thing, this empty state we've got. So I've already got somewhere, I think in here, a nice little icon that I can use instead of the one they've just put in there. A nice little coffee cup icon. No idea what it's going to look like straight out of the box, but we will see. What have I done wrong? No, that is the right. Let's try again. There we go. Cool. So other than just needing to center it a bit, and I think we probably should stop it from being quite as wide. We're not doing too badly. That'll do. We can get rid of I think I just want to take there is no authentication on the API, Alex, so it should be wide open. Yeah. Of course, we've got this now. That looks quite nice. And then once we've got some coffee brews in there, and solved out what this problem is now, we can do this here. What's going on with this now? That worked 2 minutes ago. I have Can I specify the port that this works on? My there you go. Yeah, my cause config is set to be for 3001, because when I ran this the first time, I also had another JavaScript process running on 3000, so it forced it on there. But well, it's good to see that the cause is working. Okay, so we've got this now. We want this whole thing really to be a link to something else, to our ad page. So we can use this link syntax somewhere. Where have I used it? On here, like that. Then all of that can go in a link. Then I'll go to coffee brews, add brew, and this will probably send us to a page that says add coffee brew, but has got a load of details about a coffee bean, which is fine. Not a problem. So let's look at that ad page. So the way that this is working is we set up some state with our kind of defaults. So what we'll do is we will go for sweet the bean, don't we? This is our first one. We've got grind size. We've got the dose, yield, water temperature, extraction time, comment, and rating. So straight away, I can see that we need to adjust this so that we're going to send it to post to coffee beans / bean ID. So bean ID will be stored in this bean detail up here. / brews. Once this is finished, we'll redirect back to the main dashboard. And then we'll put this in here. Okay, so there's some bits we can reuse straight away. So we can reuse strength from the bean, and comment can be, we can take the text area that we used for the, what was it, tasting notes we used. So let's do this here. So let's call this comment and comment. We'll give it a placeholder, spot on, and update that one there as well. And little bit of text in there so we know what we are doing with it. And then this one is going to be for our rating, isn't it? So let's call that rating, and then anywhere it says strength, I'm going to replace with the word rating. What else we got? Everything else apart from the bean can probably just be a regular input field. So let's go through them now, shall we? Dose, and we need another one of them for yield, and then another one for extraction time. Let's pop this one here, which will be water temperature in Celsius. So yield, dose, Okay, I think they're all there apart from bean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this up into kind of 3 sections, I think, because it kind of makes logical sense. So we'd have a break there. Why isn't that going the full width? Oh, that's why. Cool. And then let's go for another break after those ones. My thinking kind of being that these are the things you kind of, and the bean as well will be up here. These are the things you choose on the way in. So how finely you're grinding it, the dose and the water temperature. Then these two are kind of interrelated for what comes out. So how much you've got out and how long it took. Then you've got rating and comments, which is are also related. So the next one is going to be for the coffee beans. So what we want to do for this is we need to get a list of all the coffee beans, don't we? How can we do this? If I query that and say glad that worked. That's why we did list, isn't it? We've got an endpoint for this already. That's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to put something in here which says when the component first mounts, so kind of after it's rendered on the screen, we're going to do kind of something. And that thing is going to be get the list of beans. So we'll set up another piece of state here, which will be called, say, coffee beans, and set coffee beans. And to start with, it can just be a empty list. But what we're going to do is we're going to grab the same query we do on here. In fact, I can grab all of that, I think, and just take out the bits I don't need for this page. So we haven't got them. Okay, so that's cool. So we'll get a list of coffee beans. And my thinking is we will have we'll have an autocomplete or a drop down or something on there, so that the you haven't got to type in the exact name of the bean, or you haven't got to type in the bean ID, which no one's ever going to remember, are they? So we've got one for select menus here. That's quite good, I think. I quite like this one because in here we can then put some secondary text in there, and that secondary text will be the who's roasted it, which company is the roaster. So let's grab this entire thing, and I'm going to create a component called select box with secondary text. Paste that all in there. So what we're going to have is, let's start looking at this, and what are we going to have? So we're going to pass into that some props, and then we'll have in that something like props.selected. So I think it's going to be the object that's selected. So the bean will actually be a it'll be a object. So what we'll do is we will not just in here, it won't just be .bean, it'll be .bean.id or something, we'll call it. In fact, what is it called in Postman? It's ID. Cool. Suits me. So we'll get rid of this because we don't need that anymore. And let's take from this maybe what will it be? It'll be something like props dot options perhaps, and then that will be a option, and let's call it option.id. ID is quite generic, isn't it? The value will be option. So we will go for option dot. I'll do a little bit of transformation, I think, on this to yeah, a little bit of transformation on it, so we can make this component a bit more generic, I think. And then what's this here? So it'll be selected dot primary and selected dot secondary. So what I'm then thinking is we can perhaps take this here, we can add a div for that to go in. We can say select a box with secondary text. Options will be coffee beans. Selected will be details.bean, and I think that's all we said we'd need. Selected no, we're going to take this out of here, so we'll have rather than letting the component control the state of what's selected or not, I'm going to allow the parent of that component to do it. So we can then pass into here set selected, and then set selected will be something like set coffee bean, for example, and we'll just make a function that will handle that now. And that will do something like this, but it's going to go to new details.bean and bean. Okay, so we need to do a bit of transformation on this thing that comes in here. So let's do result.coffeebeans.map, and we want to return say the whole bean object. So I've got access to everything we used to have access to. I also want to have a key called primary, which is the bean name, and a key called secondary, which will be the bean roaster. And that syntax is wrong somewhere. Okay. Dare I look at this front end and see if it's in any way, shape or form going to give me a drop down? Let's have a look. Looks good to me. Null is not an object. Fair enough. So if it's open, what's it doing then? If it's maybe we should say another piece of state that's like is loading or something. So that we can guarantee that when it when that thing gets rendered, it will have something in here, is my thinking. So let's add this in here. If is loading is true, show us some loading stuff, and then that should mean that it'll catch catch any problems we've got with that. So setting coffee beans, and I think we should then say set coffee bean to be the first one on that list. I didn't like that either. Maybe then we can get something in here where in this component we don't show it until selected is not null or something. Cannot update a component app while rendering a different component add. Okay, I think it's where I'm doing this this thing here. So let's do fetch then. Actually, why don't we just do that right at the start? What's going wrong here? Hang on. That one closes. That one closes. That one closes. Oh, that's fine. Let's try that this time. So maybe now I can do set coffee bean to be beans, etc. Cool. So that was called label, wasn't it? Cool, so we've got these here. They should be updating and everything, otherwise this wouldn't be working. So let's try it out, see what happens. let's go for let's make some numbers up. Okay, that one isn't working. Why isn't that one working? What haven't I changed? Oh, that'll be why. That needs to be there. Cool. So let's do 92. A yield of 36. Another one I haven't changed. Extraction time is 25 seconds. And let's say as good as it gets. Let's see what happens when we hit save. Okay, so it looks like it did save. Some more little React warnings, but they're not end of the world for now. The question is, okay, so it looks like it hasn't added it to the right bean. I'm sure I chose a different one to that. I'm wondering if it's not changing something when I'm updating it. On change, set selected. So what's this doing? So set selected is doing set coffee bean. So let's look at what this new details looks like in the console. In fact, let's just look at the bean in particular. That's all we really care about. Okay, so that's changing. Why then? Did this not change? Oh, I wonder if when I refresh the page, it might have lost the state. Let's just add some random numbers in here. So they should be going into the Brazil coffee bean. Looks like it worked. Okay, cool. So that was working. It was just when the page did a hot reload, it decided not to keep hold of my state, which is fair enough. So I guess we're starting to near sort of a reasonable state of things working. So I think, what's this notification? Yeah, so it's I think we need to perhaps finish off this session with trying to get this list working, because I think that will involve a little bit of DynamoDB wizardry, which might be quite nice to play with for the last 20 minutes. Okay, so we know our data looks like this. We need to try and find the most efficient way for us to query this data the most efficient way for us to query this data without scanning the entire table. I wonder if the most simple way to do this would be to add an attribute called something like Dynamo item type or DynamoDB item type, and then we could have a global secondary index called that. The partition key would be our item type, and then so what we want to accomplish is we want to accomplish getting all the data for across all the different beans, the most recent brew. So I wonder if I did something like this with a sort key of sort key. Then when we look at this, if I add some data to this, and we call this brew, for example, all items in single table must contain the partition key PK. Because if I then look at this and said, let's do this, I could then do it would automatically sort it based on this. And DynamoDB, there's an option, it's not a kind of logical option in the sense that it's not called like order by ascending or order by descending. It's called scan index forward, true or false. So that would then mean that you could reverse this and we could get either the latest first or the oldest first by doing it this way. So I think if I did something like this, it only really matters for the coffee brew, but you can kind of imagine how this could then allow us to do potentially other things with this, in the sense that maybe we could say have a different UUID. The sort key might be something like that, and then our item type would be roaster, say. So then what you'd have is when you look at your item type, you could then you could get a list of all of your roasters, but you're still within this same one table. This might open some more doors for us. So I think we should go for that. The question is how do you how do you construct a route that makes sense? Because you almost want it to be like /coffee brews /latest or something. Is the only way I could think of doing it. So let's go down that route, I think. Let's add this one here. So the way we do that is we need to go into Dynamo or go into our CloudFormation. We can add another index. We'll call it that. Our key is going to be Dynamo DB item type. Then we can add a new attribute definition in here. And the only reason we have to do that is because we're defining it in an index or in a key. So anytime you define a key or a index, you have to make sure all of them are in this definitions, but anything else hasn't got to be. So that's going to be in there. We want to go to our coffee brew model. We want to make sure that when we're adding a coffee brew, that we now add a DynamoDB item type of brew, and I suggest we do the same for the bean one. And then let's quickly deploy that. Actually, no, let's do a route first. It'll give us something back. So coffee bean model, coffee brew model. Let's add another one on here. It'll be called maybe espresso backend latest. Let's just do for this, we can just do this greedy one. And then inside the function, we can do a get and this will be for, let's do coffee brews /latest. And it's going to look something like the list one. Except we're going to be querying the index called GSI item type. The key condition is going to be Dynamo DB item type equals T, and T is going to be brew. Blah, 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 that's fine. Okay, let's hit deploy on that and see if we can get something up and running. And what I'm going to do is, whilst that is running, I am going to just keep a few in here, but just delete some of the old ones and just add this to these. just so I haven't got to go and add a load more. That's looking like it's almost deployed. Let's get ready for this. So we want to go to somewhere like coffee brews / latest. And why is that not working now? Oh, that's not right. What's happened there? Oh, spelled it wrong. Wait for this to do its thing. And let's try again. Not found. What have I done here? / coffee brews. Have I not if I put a caret on the end, is it gonna work? See how quickly I can put together a table, shall we? I wonder if there's a way that I can, what does limit do? Does it limit? I don't think it does what I'm expecting it to do. Index name. That's what it was. Oh. Okay, let's try again. Cool. Have we actually got? So what order is it done them in? 38. In very nonsensical order. That's fine. We can always sort that, can't we? That's not a problem. Where is it? Oh, other way around. We want to sort it descending, don't we? It may be that we don't get to the front end for this bit today, but I will get it done at some point and make sure it's all in GitHub so you can see how it works and everything. (1841, 1838, 1757). Cool. So that's given us our list in time descending order. It's what we wanted. I think that given that we've probably got a good 15 minutes of stuff to do for the front end on this to get a list showing up, that I will call it a day there. Yeah, but like I said, I will keep on trundling through it and getting more features added, and perhaps try and use it as a bit of a example application for the sort of things you can do with AWS, specifically around DynamoDB and single table design and serverless in particular. But yeah, the nice thing is throughout these last 4 weeks now, we haven't had a single moment where we've had to think, how much RAM do I need, or how much CPU do I need, or do I need to set up some auto scaling policies or any of that stuff. It's all of the problems that we've had have been human problems in terms of actual business logic and thinking how to structure things. And they're the sort of things you would normally encounter anyway as part of a programming problem. So I really hope that these sessions have been useful, and I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to do something similar or do another kind of one-off talk at some point in the future again. If there are things on this topic, or even kind of more around the sort of data, machine learning, that kind of arena, that's where I'm sort of putting a lot of effort in doing talks this year. But as my lovely little background now says, I am now part of the AWS Community Builder program in their kind of serverless category. So there will be more serverless content coming out, whether it's through videos, streams, blog posts, whatever. That's kind of that, along with data and ML, is where I'm focusing this year. So yes, thank you all for coming today, for the last 3, if you've been here for the last 3. If you're catching up in the future, then hi, thank you, bye. It's been a good laugh. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening and good rest of your weekend, and I will see you all very soon.